This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, medical, or mental health advice. The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the podcast and are not intended to malign any religion, group, club, organization, business, individual, anyone, or anything.
I'm Sarah Edmondson.
And I'm Anthony Nippy Ames, and this is A Little Bit Culty.
We woke up from a cult, and that journey was captured in The Vow on HBO and in my memoir, Scarred.
Now, in this podcast, we break down the shame and secrets that make these experiences so destructive with honest conversations on how seemingly benign groups can cross into the cultiverse and how to spot and recover from trouble if it happens to you.
Each week, we bring in experts, survivors, and whistleblowers to explore red flags, resilience, and even share a few laughs, because sometimes you gotta laugh.
Subscribe to our Patreon for early and ad-free listening, some live Q&A, and exclusive content at patreon.com/alittleBitCulty.
Welcome to Season 8 of A Little Bit Culty.
Welcome back to ALBC, everybody. This is our second time attempting this because we've recorded it.
Well, we're new to YouTube. We're new to being a full episode on YouTube, so thanks for your patience for us. Thanks for subscribing. This episode is such a long time coming. Today's guest has lived a double life that sounds almost too surreal to be true. Hoyt Richards was one of the most recognizable faces in fashion, in my world, he still is, as the world's first male supermodel. He's worked with icons like Cindy Crawford and was photographed by legends like Richard Avedon and Bruce Weber. But behind the cameras and campaigns, there was another story unfolding, one that very few people knew.
Legend has it that he invented blue steel.
Yes, I think he did. Yeah. I think he did. We'll confirm that on this episode.
For nearly 2 decades, Hoyt was deeply embedded in a high-control spiritual group called Eternal Values, surrendering not just his income, but his autonomy. His experience is now also featured on the new HBO docuseries, familiar with those, Bring Me the Beauties, a model cult, number 2 as of this morning.
Amazing.
Woot, woot, which pulls back the curtain on the 80s supermodel world and the hidden systems of power, control, and survival behind it.
After leaving in 1999, Hoyt began the long process of rebuilding. Over the last 25 years, he's become one of the most thoughtful and articulate voices on cult dynamics, coercive control, and recovery. And we're proud to say that he's a friend. How did we meet Hoyt Richards, Nip? Do you remember?
Stephen Hassan, texted me and said, hey, you might want to reach out to this guy, Hoyt.
You had a very similar background.
He's your stunt double.
Ivy League.
He's basically you 10 years older.
Ivy League graduate, football playing.
And I was like, wait a minute. And then we texted for a while. And then I think after because I was in the shame process of rebuilding, I didn't really want to talk about it and and then it was I think 8 months later, I finally texted you and we had a conversation.
So and then we became friends. We met up in New York. And
that's right.
You took none of the advice he gave.
You gave us really good advice, Hoyt, which is in our book, right? Do you remember what you said to us?
Yeah. Well, I remember saying that, I don't advise, kind of processing your trauma on camera if you can avoid it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we said, sorry, too late.
Yeah. I was like, what? You're like, yeah, okay. But listen, that's how we all learn. It's great to see you guys. And I actually thought the second time was even better, so.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so it's good. You're good at this.
Thank you. And we've managed to see each other a couple times since at some cult events and the screening of season 2 of The Vow. And then how full circle that now we get to watch your story. I mean, we've been talking about you coming a little bit culty since we started it, and it was just never really the right timing. And now it's perfect timing.
Well, it's meant to happen when it happens because it's now more robust, I think.
It is more robust. And I don't know if I told you this, but we're watching the doc, which I think is amazing, and everyone should watch it. And as Nippy mentioned, Dr. Stephen Hassan said, you guys have a lot in common. You guys are very similar. And then we're watching your modeling career take off. And Nippy looks at me and was like, I never quite hit that level. Never quite that type of model. So
I have 2 distinctions. There's commercially handsome and then professionally good looking. And I think I fell under the commercially handsome, and you're the professionally good looking. And it's a term, the world. I was taking an acting class, and this girl comes up to me in my acting class and says, do you do print work? And I'm like, what's that? She's like, give me your headshot. She takes it down to an agent, of hers, and the guy calls me, and then I started booking like beer commercials or whatever. But then I was trying to get what I think commercial work, like actual on camera stuff, and I take my headshot into this agency, and this guy goes, "Look, right now I don't think we have room in our roster, but I can put you over to our our print or department." And he goes, literally gets on the phone and goes, "Listen, I got a guy here, square jawline, looking at me, goes, played quarterback at Brown, commercially handsome." Bump, 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 puts up, he goes, "Yeah, can you meet him Tuesday?" And I was like, it's like, fine. I called my mom. I'm like, "Mom, I'm commercially handsome." And then there's professionally good looking.
You're professionally good looking.
Well, yeah, as I always say, my parents did all the work. I just wear the costume.
That's true. They should take credit. And this is normally a question I'd ask at the end, but since we're talking about it, are you modeling at all anymore? Or
Not really. I mean, once in a while they might call the old fox, dust them off and send them out to the field, but not usually these days. We'll see. I mean, it's, sometimes I think, well, maybe what's old is new again. So we'll see what happens. If nothing else, it's nostalgic, right? So it's kind of fun in that way.
Well, I'll tell you what I saw in the doc. Hold on. Yeah, I know you have your arch that you want to do.
Go.
There was a scene at the end of the third episode, I think, where you were...
Is it spoiler alert?
...making out with Cindy Crawford. Did I see that correctly?
Yeah, that was
so I think we should start there and then work backwards. And then how does someone get to her?
Well, let me just say one thing.
I'll tell you
I'll
tell you one thing with Cindy. She's a friend of mine. I haven't seen her in a long time, but I know her husband, and he actually modeled at the same time when I was starting. So I knew Randy as well. But there was a time early on in our career when Cindy's was just really starting to take off, and we had been friendly, and we had a couple of dinners together. And I'm thinking to myself, I think I'm kind of vibing with this girl, and I could maybe ask her out. But then in the back of my mind, I'm like, you can't ask her out. You live on a fucking floor, sleep there with like 4 to 5 other people every night. Like, how are you ever going to explain your living situation? Right. So all of that, definitely cock-blocked any opportunity to really have
seriously
any of the spoils of victory that you would think by being in that business. So.
You know what? I would like to just spend this whole hour or two just talking about the modeling world. Can we do that and not talk about college? Just kidding.
We have time.
We could weave some stories. I will tell you, Hoyt, that it's kind of cool to know you in this space and, call you a friend and just, feel totally comfortable with you. And then to watch your career, like you're fucking the first male supermodel. That's really huge. That's huge. It's a good thing I didn't know that before. I might have been a little, flustered or, fangirly.
Oh, it feels like a lifetime ago. It doesn't.
I'm sure.
Like I went through it in a sense because there was so much else going on at that time. So even though I had a fantastic experience in the industry and the people I met, I've developed long-standing friendships, and I love a lot of the people I worked with, photographers, the other models. It was like a fraternity, great guys, but. It's such a strange thing looking back on it because it was so tied to the trauma that was going on that there are chunks of it that I just don't recall very well. And I just have this kind of distance to it now because I can't look at those things and not tie what was going on behind the scenes as well. So it's a strange push-pull with it. And I think even more it's now I look at it as nostalgic, but also some missed opportunities because of the fact that I was involved with eternal values. I couldn't maybe have as much fun as I could have, which probably saved me getting involved in some bad situations. I mean, I could have gotten into drugs or partying a whole lot more than I would have. So I guess there's always silver linings to it. But I do remember, there are events where, it's like, oh, we're all going to this island where Madonna's throwing this big party this weekend, and let's go down there, to the south of Spain. And I'm like, I can't fly that by the group. There's no way they're going to let me do that because, unless there's some ulterior motive, how it's going to somehow generate money for me or for the group. Yeah. And so everything was being curbed through that lens. So even though I really look back on my modeling career with fondness, because I really did get kind of plucked out of obscurity and thrown into this thing and never really struggled in the way that most people do, trying to enter in, Bruce Weber launched me and it was kind of instant credibility. And all of a sudden I started to work. And then, I was still in my senior year at college and I was turning down jobs because, people were calling me from Paris or Milan. And I'm like, I got a test on Tuesday. I can't be in Paris. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. But by the time I graduated, I had just work lined up. So I didn't go through that struggle that most people did.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
And I was convinced it was because I was making this commitment to the spiritual life. Now, this is that magical thinking operating, right?
We hope that people will watch the documentary because I think there's so much value there. But for those who decide they're not going to subscribe to HBO or they haven't seen it yet, let's give a little cursory explanation of your journey. And this is where I'm like, oh gosh, you just had to explain it so many times. So
give the bullet points.
The bullet points, you're 16, you're on Nantucket, you're on the beach with your friends.
I mean, I tried, and you guys actually quoted the same words in your book. It's the perfect storm, right? Like you have to be at a point in your life where you're seeking answers on some level, right? And intersect with someone who, from your point of view, is providing some of those answers. Now, that seeker mode is one that I consider a vulnerable place to be. And then if you encounter someone like I did who knows how to exploit that vulnerability, you're kind of screwed. That's kind of the way it works. And, it's one of these things that I look back on and I try to tell anyone who would listen, but mostly kids who are younger, because those are the people I really want to talk more to.
Yeah, me too.
My public speaking.
It's right where I am.
Because I just wish I had certain perspectives I hold now back then. I think I could have made some different choices. And in that initial conversation with Freddy, he was really engaging me, like he was talking at me clearly. And he felt like this is, I felt the way I was interpreting it, feels this is really important information for me to get. And so I'm trying to be receptive. And he would frame it effectively by saying, oh, well, you're really smart, so you'll understand this. And then he would go into a diatribe. And of course, what do you say at that point? And I'm like, most of it's flying over my head. But I'm like, I can't say, well, actually, I have no clue what you're talking about. So I'm just kind of absorbing it and feeling like he's talking to me like an adult and treating me with respect. But then at one point he turns and says, looks at my friends, because I was there at the beach with my friends when he just kind of put his towel down next to me. He says, you're different than your friends. And, and that's an intriguing question, and one that, not per se is not bad to ask. That's yourself at one point in your life, but it should come from someone who knows you. And the thing that I experienced, because I had not been forewarned about that, was, I went down the rabbit hole like, I'm not different than my friends. What do you mean? You're saying I'm special? And I went down that whole thing thinking about it, when really the question I should have been asking is, why is this person who doesn't even know me acting like they do know me and making this statement about me? Because that's the issue. Like, don't deal with the message until you've validated the messenger. And the truth is, the messenger, in this case, should be treated with a lot of skepticism. And I was just running with it and thinking like, oh, this person's trying to engage me and seems to somehow care about me. And I think that's the danger, is if you don't know these people are out there, if you don't know that these are potential tactics and techniques, what you're going to experience more likely is kind of what I experienced is, oh, this person gets me, they see me, they understand me, and they're going to maybe be this kind of mentor to me. And you embrace it with all this open arms type of thing. And you're off on the ride of being, groomed for some form of indoctrination.
Before we hear from our sponsors, just a quick reminder. Our book, A Little Bit Culty, Navigating Cults, Control, and Coercion, is officially out and available on Amazon.
Signed pre-orders have closed, but you can still get your copy today. This book is the culmination of 5 years of conversations, interviews, and research. Everything we've learned about how people get pulled into high-control groups and how to avoid, escape, or heal from them.
If you've been listening to the podcast and want a deeper go-to resource, this is it.
Available now on Amazon in print and as an ebook for Kindle. And yes, the audiobook is coming soon, narrated by us.
Just search A Little Bit Culty and grab your copy. Do it.
Thanks, everybody. Summer always does this thing where it forces me to confront my wardrobe like some kind of annual intervention. Suddenly, everything's too heavy, too structured, too blah. I just want to feel like a human who has their life together without melting, especially here in hot Atlanta. Quince has truly nailed that sweet spot of looks expensive but doesn't require a second mortgage. 100% European linen, organic cotton, washable silk, the kind of fabrics that breathe and move and don't make you look like a wrinkled disaster by 10 a.m. Their linen pants start at $32, which honestly makes no sense given how great they are. Soft denim for when you need real pants and organic cotton sweaters for those cool summer evenings. Everything's 50 to 80% less than other brands because they skip the middleman and work directly with ethical factories. So you're not funding some brand's fancy ad budget, just getting quality stuff. I have 2 personal favorites this summer so far because I've been doing a fair bit of traveling and I'm going to continue to be taking too many planes. But I bought a super soft fleece set. One is a full zip hoodie and one is, I actually got 2 pants so I can mix and match the joggers and the wide leg. Both look great. I also got the Bella Stretch barrel jeans in white, and these are my go-to summer jeans. They are high-waisted, which is perfect for, the mom-tom. And plot twist, Quince has also expanded into home goods, bedding, kitchen stuff, all elevated, but actually affordable. I've gotten a lot of my birthday gifts from my girlfriends here at Quince. So yeah, join the party. Elevate your summer wardrobe. Go to quince.com/culty for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/culty for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/culty.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Summer in Canada is supposed to be magical. Long hikes, nature, endless daylight, cold plunging in the natural glacial waters, finally enjoying the outdoors after months of hibernation. And sometimes it is, but sometimes it's also juggling work, kids, trying to maximize every precious sunny day and feeling guilty that you're not enjoying it enough. Spoiler alert, that guilt is exhausting. Here's what therapy can do that a hike can't. Help you actually understand what you need instead of what you think you should need. Help you set boundaries so summer doesn't become a stress marathon. Help you create a version of summer that actually feels good instead of just checking boxes at some imaginary summer bucket list. BetterHelp matches you with fully licensed therapists who get it. A quick questionnaire, and their system does the work to find someone who fits you, not just the first available person. They've been doing this for over 12 years with a pretty stellar track record. And if it's not clicking, switch anytime. Sessions happen online whenever it works for your chaotic schedule. No fitting another thing into your impossible calendar because thriving this summer shouldn't require superhuman powers or perfect weather. Sometimes it just requires someone who helps you figure out what exactly makes you happy. You don't have to say yes to everything this summer. Find support in therapy. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/culty. That's betterhelp.com/culty. Do you actually know how much life insurance you have? And more importantly, how much you're paying for it? Yeah, me neither, until I realized I might be overpaying for coverage that probably isn't enough. If your life insurance comes through your job and you get unexpectedly laid off, your coverage disappears, just like that. Suddenly, you're unprotected and scrambling to figure out how to fix it. You definitely want to call SelectQuote because apparently adulting means having these conversations with yourself at 2 a.m. They've been doing this for over 40 years, helped 2 million people secure over $700 billion in coverage. Their licensed agents actually work for you, not some insurance company trying to maximize their profit. In 15 minutes, they'll compare policies from top carriers to find what fits your health and your budget for free. No medical exam needed for many policies, and they've got options even if you have high blood pressure, diabetes, or heart disease. Same-day coverage up to $2 million without visiting a doctor. Here's the hard truth. Life insurance is never cheaper than it is today. So why would you wait? It's time to get this sorted. Get the right life insurance for you for less and save more than 50% at selectquote.com/culty. Save more than 50% on term life insurance at selectquote.com/culty today to get started. That's selectquote.com/culty.
Did you skip over all the ads? We hope you didn't. Thank you to our sponsors and thank you for listening. Now, let's resume our culty convo.
Hoyt, I have a somewhat similar experience. I was 17, and I remember I was back on spring break from my boarding school, and I was in a bookstore. I would go to a bookstore and just kind of read a book and hang out when I had like a month off. And this guy comes up to me and says he was casting stuff in Atlanta. And he had cast part of Fried Green Tomatoes, which shot here. And he gave me his card and said, you got a good look or whatever. And I told my dad, and my dad goes, stay the fuck away from that guy.
Yeah.
And my dad knew, for whatever reason, and he's just like, you don't know, why would he come up? He just gave me some questions to think about because I was like, oh shit, maybe you're going to cast. And but
I would have called him.
Yeah. But it was but that's the whole thing. It's I just had a dad who cut it off. And listen, there wasn't
Yeah.
going to be, I had natural restrictions on my time and energy at the time, but had my
Right.
dad not been there and I'm 17 and I'm in school in Atlanta, I don't know any better. Who knows? Who knows what that guy would have done? So
And-
I got it because I was like, sure, I'm interested in.
And that reminds
Yeah.
me, in the doc, one of the other what's it called? One of the other members of Eternal Values talks about how he was in a bookstore and reading, and Freddy goes in and goes, "I've been waiting for you." And I was sort of chuckling to myself because Keith used to say that recruitment's a numbers game. You invite 10 people, like 2 are going to say no, 4 are going to think about it, but there's always one 1 out of 10
That says yes to
that says
everything.
yes to everything. So you can just go through. So I'm wondering, how many times did Freddy put his towel down at the beach beside a handsome young man, or go into a bookstore and say, "I've been waiting for you," and
makes
the
you
person's,
wonder.
like, is it?
And that's where the
Yeah.
title comes from, because, Bring Me the Beauties. He never said that to me, but I heard that from friends of his who were peers who would stay with him up in Nantucket. So that was before I entered the picture. And he would rent a house, and then he'd invite house guests, have them pay rent so he wouldn't have to actually pay rent. And he would throw a party almost every night, but ran the house kind of like a ship, in the sense that after the party, they'd have to get up early, they'd have to clean the house, restock the bar, go out, shop, get the hors d'oeuvres. And when his friends would be going out to the beach or into town to do whatever activity they had, he would give them a card that had the address of the house and say, "Bring me the beauties. Don't invite their friends. Bring me the beauties, and only them." And that was kind of the type of crowd that he was trying to pull in. And I think these narcissistic types, sometimes they try to build their self-esteem by who they associate with. And so I think Freddy
Sure.
wanted to be around that type of glamour. He wanted to be around the social scene. I never heard of the social register until I met Freddy. And, I didn't even know that was a thing. And then, he scammed his way into that thing. I think, he's kind of like one of those, that woman inventing Anna, where you just kind of fabricate the whole background. And then when that book came out, that's the thing that I watched. I tell people, it's like when I got involved with him, he was kind of a narcissist with an entourage. It's like getting in the ground floor of a startup and watching it become a cult, on your own watch. And with Freddy, the catalyst to him, it really becoming what you would really kind of qualify and categorize as a cult, was that Aliens Among Us book coming out, which basically validated this false biography that he had been selling. And that's when not only did he get street cred, but then we were getting letters from like 45 countries, people wanting to have life readings or wanting to have information. So we had to create an office and a business, and that's where the recruitment ramped up, and that's where it really became that kind of entity that you would properly and accurately label as a cult.
Right. Because
he leveraged you guys' credibility too.
Yeah, exactly. That's right, Nippy. I mean, that's when I look back at it in my kind of naivete of like the way he branded us as kind of these beautiful people and that sort of thing, but not everyone in the group was that. Branded us as Ivy League students. Not everyone was like that. It was all kind of a brand that he would put out there. And part of that was just this idea that he, was, this educated, highly evolved person. And I never even asked him, like, well, did you go to college? Which he didn't. He never went to college. So to have this kind of association with, he was so quick to talk about, all my students are Yale, Princeton, and Harvard, and all this bullshit. But I never stopped and said, well, where did you go to college? Where did you grow up? What's your background? He never talked about his background at all. He would talk about his associations with, I met Lord Ben Batten or Mount Ben Batten, some socialite over the Prince of something, and the Duchess of this and the Duke of that. And I'm just like, wow, this guy's a traveled man. He knows people in high places. I was enamored by the idea of someone who just had traveled the world. And as he said, I've seen it all, and it all means nothing.
Right.
And you should see it all and realize that it's nothing as well.
Right. Because he's so evolved and not attached.
Exactly.
I mean, that's such one of the classic spiritual guru bullshit red flags. It's like, I'm not attached, and yet everything in my home must be custom made.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly. I'll have 10 Mercedes Benzes.
It's so on point. Yeah.
Yeah.
And your spirit, not body, but the way you look is replicated by how you think. It's like, wait, am I spirit or am I body? Like, what am I then? It's like, why are you putting so much emphasis on the body then?
Right. Why have you had 4 facelifts, Frederick?
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
that's been kind.
Yeah.
I think there might have been more. Yeah.
Yeah,
God,
where
he looked like plastic
he
at the
leaned
end.
into that stuff. Keith leaned into the schlubby, I'm a hobbit, I don't need these things kind of thing. I'm just drawing the parallels. And one of the parallels,
Right, but all the women had to be skinny, right? Like that.
Yeah.
yeah. When Keith, it seemed that the difference is like one of the things that kind of like, I never saw Keith react in the way that I saw Freddy react. And I'm sure Keith did behind closed doors. I don't know. I mean, I've heard that he has. But when Freddy got challenged openly, he didn't keep his cool in the way that I think,
Like on that TV show?
yeah. Which
Oh my God.
I think, if
the Jerry Springer show.
yeah, if you're a guru, one of the things that you have going for you, I think, is you can always accept being challenged, and that's one of the way to win over your doubters is when you're challenged, you accept the challenge. It didn't seem like he accepted
He got
questions.
flustered.
He got flustered, and that can lose credibility pretty quickly, I think, with people who are scrutinizing you. What was your kind of response to that? Had you seen that before that, and what was his like when he was...
it's one of those things that because it's uncomfortable and it goes against the narrative that I'm holding on to, so to speak.
Yeah.
That that this is my guru. He's enlightened. I'm on the spiritual path. I'm going to become a more unselfish and enlightened person. All that. I think that's where we all become our own enemies. I know I did, because I would start to self-censor out the experiences that were coming forward that were contradictory, if not flat out hypocritical to what that narrative was. And so I remember there was a point when he was trying to recruit my younger brother, into the group, who was about 16 at the time. And I was a senior in college. And so at one point I was in New York and I was talking to my brother, and he got on the phone and was talking with him. And at this point, he was already starting to, put down my parents and how they were holding me back, and, and then you would never want to become like them, and you have to break your patterns and all these sort of things. So he's on the phone giving the spiel to my brother Christian, and my mother's been eavesdropping, and she jumps into the like, "What are you doing?" and starts yelling at him. And this is after multiple times of him telling me how I need to confront and tell my mother basically how full of shit she is and all these sort of things.
Wow.
And he freaks out, hands me the phone, and says, "Your mother's just evil," and walks away. And I'm like, what the fuck am I supposed to do now? And I'm just watching him completely cave. And I just suppressed that whole thought immediately. Like, oh, no. Oh, no, that he must have had a reason for doing that. And this is some kind of test for me. Like, that's all the bullshit you kind of rationalize away. So, yeah, there were indications like that along the way. And those are the things I think are most important about the recovery path is, on some level, you have to accept the victimhood of like, okay, I didn't want to do this. I didn't plan this. And there wasn't like informed consent getting involved, all that. But then as you go down the recovery path, for me, the most important is the accountability of, okay, I am a victim, but I was also a participant.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there were plenty of times when I went along with things and I had enough critical thinking to know this is not adding up. This feels wrong. This feels maybe even abusive. And I would either reflect on just either ignore it, or I would, I've been convinced that these type of thoughts were the negative, dark thoughts that were going to take me off the path, and just, say that just don't even listen to that. It's like thought stopping, like, Steve Hassan, Robert Lifton talks about. And so that is on me, and that's the part when I finally had the epiphany and realized I had been in a cult. All those thoughts came flooding back to me like, dude, you fucking knew. Yeah. You saw the signs. And that's the place that you have to have the humility to just admit to yourself, number one, that you got conned. And two, you had all those thoughts along the way. And that is on you. And that is the place that you can say, okay, even though I got in this heavily influenced environment, you could say I was brainwashed and all that, I'm still responsible. And I'm still accountable for all the things I said and did. And that's the part that I can start to rebuild, because that was always there. And that part can still operate going forward and make better decisions based on this experience. Mm-hmm. So that's the part I had to start to rebuild. And that's, I think, where a lot of survivors resist that part. For sure. You have to humble yourself.
You have to
take a bite out of that and lean into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe we get into the recovery more in part two. I will say it's important to understand that you can take responsibility, but also understand what's happening to you psychologically that keeps you in. Like watching your story since you left your family at so young, whether consciously or unconsciously made this group your other family. It's harder to leave when you've burnt that bridge. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you burnt that bridge. Yes, you can take responsibility 100%, but you wouldn't have done that without Frederick encouraging you to. So it's like, it's not like one or the other. It's like, yes, and you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
it's both and. I completely concur. Yeah.
Well, yeah, you go from a binary world to a more nuanced world, and that's where I think
exactly. And I love that, that term binary, because I really think that's more evidence even today than even when I went through this whole
for
thing.
sure.
100%.
Yeah. And then you become confidently stupid. The term I like is confidently stupid.
Well, I mean, it's all being sold
Yeah.
under the guise that it's going to simplify your life, right? Like, at
Yes.
any moment you make a right or wrong decision, which
And
sounds
life's
like
not
will simplify
simple.
your life.
Yeah.
No, it's very complicated.
Yeah.
And your only real asset is having your critical thinking, where if I analyze and look at a situation, I mean, again, it's a very subjective process, but I have to use my subjectivity to say, well, what are the pros and cons of this situation? That's my critical thinking operating. And from that point of view, I'm going to make a choice either to act or not to act. And either one of those choices is going to inform me. So to start trying to label that as right or wrong, what's the point of that? I mean, I'm just doing the best I can. I'm getting information and I'm learning by whatever choices I make. I'm happily a work in progress, and it's not about trying to get it right, or this idea that there's a system that's going to somehow work out with this one size fits all, that once you figured it out, you can just go share it with everyone else. That's just not how I see the world anymore. I mean, if you don't live in the shades of gray, you're really doing yourself some self-harm, and you're not going to be very authentic to anyone else.
Yeah, and you're going to get extreme if you keep it binary. Every belief system has an extreme version of itself, and if you don't keep it gray, you risk becoming binary. Yeah, it's a good way.
And I think you risk being easily controlled, because it's like, are you with us or are you against us? It's like, hold on a second. There's more options than that.
And we've had presidents say that.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll continue. I mean, I think anyone who rises to that office is probably pretty narcissistic.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%. Okay, so Hoyt, we've talked a little bit about, your journey into it and how he hooked you through this promise of a spiritual path and community, and you burn the bridges with your family, but also there's a sort of second commitment to it, I find. Like, or tell me if this is accurate, when your football season ends, and then like that's another level of like really going deeper into the group, right?
Yeah, exactly. That was for me really when I would say the hooks went in, because if you want to call it, my grooming process with Freddy was very long-winded. Like, it wasn't a hard, like a full court press right out of the blocks at all. I would just bump into him during the summers. We were friends when he found out. Then, I went to school in England for a year before I went to college back here in the States. And when he found out I was going to be in New Jersey at Princeton, that's where he's like, oh, you should come into New York and you should come, meet my friends and go to Studio 54. Because at that point, I only knew him from bumping into him on the street, going occasionally to his parties. And I didn't get the sense of the entourage then. It wasn't until I went to New York and actually brought a couple buddies of mine and we went to Studio 54 that I realized he had this kind of posse around him. And so that was a new dynamic. And again, wasn't the type of thing of like, oh, you have to come up here all the time. It was just kind of like, when you have time, come up and we'll go to the nightclubs. I'm thinking, I actually thought I was working him at that time, like I'm taking advantage. And he never hit on me, but I could tell he liked me. And it wasn't like he liked me in a romantic way. He just, wanted me around. And I think he probably liked the way I looked, and he liked some of my, my friends and that sort of thing. So, but when I went through the injury with the football and the trainers basically saying to me, I don't know, buddy, I just think it may be time to hang up your cleats. That was such an identity crisis for me, because I had been an athlete my whole life. And I know, Nippy, you can identify with this. Like, all my friends were football players, my roommates were football players. Like, that was so tied to who I thought I was. Like, if you had asked me at that time, I would have said, oh, I'm a football player from Princeton. Like, that's how I self-identified. So to think, oh, you can't do that, my first reaction was, I got to get a second opinion. And that's when I went up to New York and found out that, the guy's like, well, we could operate. This is like right before my junior year of college. He's like, but I can't guarantee. He says, you can't play this year. But senior year, you might be able to play, but you won't necessarily have full extension of your arms overhead. And I'm like, I'm a defensive back. I got to have full extension. He's like, well, I'm just saying, can't guarantee it. So that's where I was like, I didn't have any delusions of going pro or anything. I was hoping that year to maybe fight for the starting position. It wasn't like I was a lodged in starter and I had some great position. I was just hoping to get out there on the field. And I'm like, this looks like I'm going to have to maybe hang up the cleats. And that's when Freddy swooped in and said, hey, have you ever considered acting or modeling? Like, that's when he's like, you've got a good look. First time I heard that. And that's where he kind of, started the wheels turning, and ultimately got in there, the Ford, and that's where it all started. So that was the thing that had me started to come to New York a lot, like, trying to pursue that career, going on go-sees and going on commercial auditions and all that sort of thing. And that's where I started to, interface with this group that was around him. And that's really when the hooks went in.
So tell us a little bit about like once the hooks came in and you decide to like move in with them, and this is where I'm curious about what the HBO doc got right or what they got, what they missed. Cause I feel like it's hard for people to really understand, like, what's the belief system? What's the lifestyle? Like what before shit got weird, what was good about it?
Well, it's a great question. It's one I think that people leave out a lot when talking to kind of survivors, like, what made you stay, right? I would say it was the camaraderie. It was the sense of the like-minded people. Like, I found my tribe, and this whole idea that this was your spiritual family. And it's like, you can't choose your biological family, but you can choose your friends and spiritual family. So that was really ingrained. And the idea, the way I try to frame it is, when I finally escaped, that was 1999, and The Matrix had just come out. And that is, I think, the best analogy to describe the indoctrination process I went through. Is at that point, he is more or less telling me that all the brainwashing that happened was before you met me. How you look at the world, what your parents taught you, that's the Matrix. You're stuck in this thing. Most people don't even know that they're in the Matrix, and we've pulled you out. This is why you need to avoid going back into that, because those people, although they think they care about you and all, they don't even know there's a Matrix. So unconsciously, they're going to try to pull you back into the very thing I'm trying to pull you out of. So you have to show this discipline and diligence, if you're really committed to your spiritual path, to say no to that and walk away. And when they cross over to the other side and leave their bodies, they'll be like, oh, my son, my friend, my brother, how powerful and amazing they were, that they were able to turn away from the Matrix that I didn't even know I was in, and live that life they lived. And that's where there'll be redemption. But in this lifetime, they're not going to get it. Not going to get it. And that was a really powerful technique to make think, oh, I've been given this special information, this special opportunity, and tied to the idea that, the astrology, like, you've gone through lifetimes, and now you've got the opportunity to stop the karmic wheel. Now, if you commit and do what you can do in this lifetime, you'll never have to come back here. Or unless you want to be like me, Freddy, who decided, I'm only going to come back here to serve, but I'm no longer beholden to the karmic wheel that's around and going on. And so all of that sounded fantastic. Of like, how can I turn my back on that opportunity? Like, as much as I wasn't sure whether I believed it, I'm thinking, if I just ignore that, I think I'm going to pay some penalty down the road. So I'm like, let me investigate. Let me find out more. And that's really how the indoctrination started.
What degree do you think he believed what he was saying? Or do you think, and then I guess the question I'm asking is, what degree of malevolence is he operating at?
I mean, I think it's impossible to get inside someone's head, especially someone who I think has crossed into something kind of pathological. I would say my feeling is, having lived with him, as I was traveling a lot, but I got to see a lot of him. He never let down his guard. He never broke character, so to speak, right? As far as I could see. And from that perspective, he kind of just, I think, because he had been a grifter and kind of a con man, and then when the Ruth Montgomery book came out, he got into this place where if I say it, it becomes true. And I think he had lost sense of what's truthful, what's false, because he didn't get off the signs of someone who was lying, per se. So I think that's a factor. Another thing that I realized, that he was just very adept at making you feel like he could see you and hear you and connect to you. And when he died, and the group went through this incredible kind of power struggle and disarray, we would have these kind of group therapy sessions. At that point, there was probably like 30 of us or so, maybe 35. And we would go around the group, and to a person, everyone would say, oh, Frederick made it very clear to me I was his favorite. To a person. And when you hear that and you see that, now at the time, I just thought, oh my God, he's so amazing. But now I can look back and say, well, clearly that's a technique. That's not possible to do, unless you're just manipulating. So, that authenticity that I thought at times I was feeling, clearly, I question all of it at this point. I'll put it that way.
This episode would not be possible without the support of our sponsors. Let's hear what they have to offer. Our outdoor space used to be what I called my backyard of doom, a stoop of shame. Like if guests wanted to sit outside, I'd remember that I suddenly have to show them something inside, anything inside. And then we actually used Wayfair. And now I don't have to fake emergency indoor tours because I want to host people outside. Right now, I am obsessed with the Anderson fully assembled, yes, that's right, you don't have to do it yourself, 10-person outdoor sectional seating group with cushions. Look it up or come on over. It is a beautiful set, and I am so excited about the parties I am going to host while it is warm out here in Hotlanta. Because the thing about outdoor furniture usually is it's heavy, it's complicated, and the assembly instructions look like they were written by someone who hates you personally. And Wayfair gets this. They offer installation and assembly services, which is code for, we'll deal with the soul-crushing parts that you don't have to. Thank you. Outdoor seating, grills, lighting, storage, basically everything you need to turn your sad concrete situation into an actual place that humans want to be. And with over 20 million 5-star reviews, you can hear from real people who've already survived the process, or process, depending on what part of the world you live in. Plus, Wayfair Verified means that their team actually tests everything with a 10-point inspection: quality, functionality, how long it takes to build, so you're not playing Russian roulette with your backyard. Now, when people ask to sit outside, I'm like, yes, please do. It's a whole new world. Come on out. People, patio season is here, and these amazing deals won't last. Head to wayfair.com right now to get your outdoor space ready for way less. That's WAYFAIR.com. Happy summer. Happy shopping.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
When I tell people their phone bill could be $15 a month, they look at me like I'm either lying or using 2 tin cans connected by string. What's the catch, they ask? And I get it. I had the same reaction because for years, wireless companies have trained us to expect the rug pull. The hidden fees, the introductory rate that expires after 3 months, the customer service that makes you want to throw your phone into the ocean. But here's the thing. There is no catch. It's actually $15. Unlimited talk, text, and data on the nation's largest 5G network. An actual award-winning care team that doesn't make you want to scream into the void. You bring your current phone, keep your number, pick a 3, 6, or 12-month plan, and just stop hemorrhaging money on wireless. That's it. That's the whole conspiracy. I guess if there's a catch, it's that you'll be mad you didn't do this years ago and calculate how much money you've basically set on fire. But other than justified rage at past you, no catch. Just a phone bill that doesn't make you cry. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/Colty. That's mintmobile.com/Colty. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/Colty. That's it. There's no catch. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speeds slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional tax fees and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. This message is sponsored by Raycon. Father's Day is coming up, and I'm already panicking because what do you get the dad who either has everything or insists he needs nothing? I'm good. Don't worry about that. Classic dad move. But I found something that actually works. Raycon's Everyday Earbuds Classic. Boom. I've been using mine pretty much every day. Gym, errands, working from home. They're the ones I actually reach for because the active noise cancellation is legitimately impressive without completely isolating you from the world. You can still hear what's going on around you without sacrificing sound quality, which is perfect for dads who need to stay aware but also want to tune out when necessary. The ergonomic design actually stays put. You can pair them with 2 devices at once, and the new colors are great. I went with Cool Mint because apparently I make decisions based on vintage appliance aesthetics. Here's the kicker. Same premium motto as the big brands, half the price. Over 3 million happy customers, 30-day guarantee, currently 15% off. So you get him the thoughtful gift, and you both avoid the "you really didn't have to" dance. Win-win. Upgrade your dad's everyday routine. Go to buyraycon.com/Colty to get 15% off. Thanks, Raycon, for sponsoring.
Thank you for listening. Now, let's dive back into the cultiverse.
Do you think, I've ascertained in hindsight that I think Keith purposely put people in positions to accelerate their demise and enjoyed them writhing in pain. I believe that. I think you can't you can't not have a malevolent mind. I don't get that impression from Freddy.
Yeah, I do. I kind of juxtapose Freddy with my mother, and I say that with loving, like, towards my mother, but she had narcissistic tendencies, and it was a coping mechanism from her issues growing up, having some abandonment issues, with her dad having an affair based on the circumstances that, were also kind of relevant to what the choices my grandmother, her mother had made. But she had developed all these issues, I think, where because of that, she kind of fostered codependent relationships because she didn't want to be left again. And so I wouldn't say it was conscious and I wouldn't say it was malicious, but she fostered that kind of dependence on her because she didn't. And so that created that controlling aspect. So for me, when I thought I was escaping that and exercising my independence to go join Eternal Values, I just found a worse version of what I grew up with. But I would say the dynamics with Freddy was there was a degree of malevolence, and he didn't like my mother with all those issues. I really believe and know in my heart of hearts that she loved me and all of my siblings. But Freddy, I just don't think I think if I psychoanalyze Freddy, he was born to two kids who were 16. He got handed off his grandparents, and he never learned to attach. He never understood intimacy, never stood love. I think that's why he frowned upon the idea of romantic love, because he never had experienced it. So he thought it was all bullshit on some level. And so I think all of that played into this thing of, people wanting to connect with people on that deeper, more personal level. He thought it was all bullshit. He's like, your only real love affair should be with God, and everything else is bullshit. And so whether he believed that or not, I can't know, but that's what he sold,
It sounds like it's a difference between, say, like human error, right? Versus, with Freddy and your mom versus like someone sees that they're damaged and it's a conscious thing that they're doing. Like a predatory thing.
Yeah, I think it falls somewhere in that category. I guess more than when I think about it as we're talking, I just have a resistance to giving him too much power. Because it's like, it's like, I just think he's a really damaged person with really bad coping mechanisms that only got exacerbated by the attention, the book that Ruth Montgomery thing did. And when you're near someone like that, you experience the carnage that person creates.
Yeah.
And
you're in their wake.
When you look at, the template that we now know so well on the side of recovery, he does so many of the things that make these cult leaders successful. He got you and so many of the people young, like under 20, 16, 17, whatever. He mixed truths with lies, because it is true. When you are raised, you have the indoctrination of your parents, like the whole thing with the Matrix, like you said. He told you that you were removing yourself from the brainwashing of whatever your parents taught you. There is truth to that. Your parents indoctrinate you in the way that they want to indoctrinate you, or your school teachers or your society or whatever. There is truth to that. And then he, provides this path out, which requires full commitment. And if you're not fully committed and doing all the things, then you're not part of the group anymore. So
there's
consequences, right. and you burn your bridges with your family. So like that just, pushes you further and further in. Before we take a break, is there anything else that we didn't cover in terms of that wasn't covered in the doc, or like any other major red flags that you now, knowing what you know now, like perceive differently? Or
well, I think, like, when I think of the doc, one of the things I had always said I wanted to do was tell the survivor's story, because I feel like that doesn't usually that's not the lens that these stories get told in. They're generally being told as the villain's tale. They focus on the cult leader, they focus on the carnage they create. That's the true crime, train wreck, entertainment type of thing. So I feel we ended up somewhere in a hybrid version of that, because I just think the way these things have to get sold, that it's too irresistible not to lean into the, as I say, Freddy heavy type parts of the story and all that. But I really do feel like the way these stories can be most effectively told is what I like to call the ripple effect, because you don't go through this experience in a vacuum. Everyone who cares about you gets involuntarily dragged on this journey with you. It's like having a drug addict in the family who you're observing, albeit maybe under great influence, whether the drug or in this case, the cult. They're making choices that clearly are self-sabotaging and maybe even, destructive in some form. And you feel powerless to stop that person, and you suffer a really traumatic wound. And so I feel like that aspect of the story is a great way to tell the story. Like, what's the insider perspective and what's the outsider perspective? Because the audience is going to identify much more with the family and the outer friends. Like, dude, what the fuck's going on? Well, they're acting so differently. What is happening? How? And I think it's important to tell that part, because those are the red flags that you start to see in that. And just like in the story, my roommate started to say, like, he's not the same guy anymore. And meanwhile, the only thing they could point to is like, well, he's eating really healthy. He's not partying as much. Like, doesn't sound so bad. But if it's the personality shift where you feel like that person, it's kind of a very, human inherent nature thing where you're like, yeah, but something's off. And that's the type of thing that I wish got addressed more, so that whether it's therapists or psychologists, like, those are things that are red flags you need to be alarmed about. And it's time to take action and not just pass it off like, oh, he's just on a spiritual path that you don't understand. Let him be. No, those are things that, to be serious and really think about.
Yeah. If you focus on that, the other part isn't so much content specific. It can be anything. It can be a church. It can be someone who's attracted to drugs, attracted to a political group too much. It can be the process of how human beings do these things ought to be the spotlight rather than this.
I agree.
Train
and
wreck.
It's something everyone's experienced, most commonly in a friend getting involved in some love relationship, and then they're talking up this person, they're all excited. And then when you meet the person and you see them together, your friend is acting totally different. You're like, dude, what the fuck is going on here? And that's a cultic relationship where all of a sudden you see this personality shift around this other person that they've been building up, saying that they're the greatest thing and they're making it a lot better and all that. That is, that dynamic that I, like to frame as, the greatest criteria of a cultic relationship is this, clear the factor that you've given your power away, usually unconsciously, to this other person or group. And you're now, and it usually happens because they've swept you off your feet, maybe in some way through flattery or your attention. And at a certain point, you start seeking out that attention, and then at that point, either the person or the group start to withhold some of that, and you start to pursue it more. And then they're exercising potentially some control or even abuse to try to keep you in line. And all you're experiencing is, no matter how hard I try, it never seems to be enough. And no matter what I seem to do, I'm always being diminished. And that is part of the human condition. That's why I like to look at this kind of like the cultic relationship spectrum. Stephen Hassan talks about a continuum. I really think we have to look at these things like a shades of gray. Like, every relationship, whether group dynamic or one-on-one, are somewhere on that cultic spectrum. Once you understand that those dynamics, and depending on how much of those influences are in place or not, will determine how dangerous or not that relationship could be. But that just seems to be the way that we interact with other humans. And those factors are present or not present depending on the degree of the relationship. But for us to think that's why I think that label cult can be so dangerous, because the way the media's kind of pop cultures have portrayed it, it's such a triggering thing to have to dig out of. When I take ownership and say, oh, well, I was in a cult for 20 years. People are like, with Jonestown, like, were you guys gonna kill babies? Were you running naked and in some orgies? And it's a lot that's got to dig out of.
Yeah, you certainly have to contend with a lot of thought objects of it that aren't.
Yeah. So if I say I had a 20-year cultic relationship with a group, now people are like, oh, what does that mean? And then it's a healthier way for them to start the conversation, I thought.
Yeah.
Or saying, I try to share now, like, I worked for the executive coaching program for many years that turned out to be a front for
right.
group.
So that people can understand that I wasn't actively part of a cult. Like, I wasn't consciously part of a cult for 12 years,
Right. And I think that's why even that word join that people use, like, did you join the group? It's like, joining implies informed consent. And these things are inherent, and you guys write about it in your book, it inherently involves deception. So it's not if there's any joining, it's the pitch. Like, I joined the idea that this was some movement that was going to be some spiritual guiding principle that was going to help the world and help everyone involved and become elevated and more spiritual and more kind and less selfish and all, a better version of themselves. So I'll never beat myself up for that idea. Right. And that's that narrative. that I bought into. And I think it's something to be proud of to say at that time and place in my life, I was willing to commit
I totally
to it.
agree.
You were disciplined.
It's like because people are like, how did you come out of this? Do you feel like, you've got commitment issues? I'm like, no, actually, I learned I can totally fucking commit. Like I can go all in. Yeah. But if I could do it for something that was healthy for me, I think it might serve me a little better than what I did. So, but we got no problem with commitment, man.
You also,
I can dive in.
Address something, kind of touch on something that I've policed myself to do is like, I don't defend myself anymore. Like, I think that comes from a place of like, I'm reluctant to use the term ego, or like you're trying to preserve your self-image. Like, I made, like you said, a decision based on a certain amount of assumptions that I don't beat myself up for. In short, like this is something that took me a while to embrace but I was a victim of a crime. You were a victim of a crime. And I think that's where the emphasis should be. And then exposing the crime, isn't something I'm ashamed of. Yeah. And then reconciling it. So I don't defend myself anymore. Like it's
No, I concur. I think it really is a matter of, again, if you don't know those people exist, if you don't know someone is out there who can, in essence, weaponize your noble inclinations against yourself, you just won't see it coming because that's not on your, it's kind of like a thing I noticed, and I'd be curious to hear you guys' perspective on this. People within the power structure of the cultic system, there's always a hierarchy. And I think I was watching a doc about, that was One Love or something like that.
Love is One.
Love is One, right. And there was kind of an expert type witness there talking about it. And he was saying how there is this criminal element to the way the cult leader operates. And for the true devotee seekers, they're not operating that way. I was falling into that category, not seeing things from that perspective. You're just devoted, going along, doing the best you can. But for the people who are more criminally oriented, they start to recognize what's going on. And they learn that they can mirror that behavior. And those are the people that rise up in the organization. Because they catch on and they feel comfortable being tyrannical. They feel comfortable screaming at people. And for the worker bees like myself, or the true believers, there was either you were doing it, which meant you were being abusive to people and tyrannical, or you were a pussy and a follower. And I fell into that category because I wasn't comfortable screaming at people and trying to put them down and all that sort of thing. But I also didn't.
That wasn't your jam.
Yeah, but I also didn't recognize, thankfully, I don't really have that criminally, tendency to want to do that to people. And those people are the ones that rise up. And that was really helpful for me to go, oh, okay, that makes more sense of this power structure that I was involved with. That
you
I
also had
really
other things
understand.
going on in your life to get your self-esteem from, too. So it's not like,
Yeah, that did keep like one foot in reality. That really did. The fact that I wasn't there all the time, and the fact that I developed friendships and people I cared about outside the circle, which was frowned upon. I had to lie about that. And I think that's why I've been such a blabbermouth about my experience for 20 years, because I really realized that being silent was something that didn't sit well with me when I finally awakened to what I spent so much time being deceptive, not only to the people on the outside about what I was involved with eternal values, but even the people in eternal values. I would not admit how much I cared about these people on the outside. They really meant something to me, and I even loved them. So I just felt like I was being deceptive and lying to everyone at all times. And that was like a little Pac-Man that ate at me. So when I finally figured it out, like I don't know what I'm going to do as far as dealing with this, but I'm not going to shut up. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to figure it out. And I made a lot of mistakes. And, I went through kind of like an initial period where I just had to tell someone. Like after being in the fashion business and all about putting on a persona and like selling a product, and I was like, that is so not who I am. And I know, like, when I get in a cab, people are going to think I'm like that guy. And so I'd be in a cab and I'd be going like, oh yeah, I need to go to 48th and 3rd. Did I tell you it's in a cult? Yeah. 20 years.
Oh
yeah,
my God.
Really? Yeah. And the guy's like, what, who is this person? I'm like, and it would just come out of my mouth. Because I'm like, I just want you to see me. I'm so tired of being this deceptive facade. And like, I want you to see me. And then, then I kind of fell into the pattern of like shocking people and kind of getting off on that and realizing that's not healthy. So it's been an evolution, but I was determined, it's actually in the doc, that moment when I finally went public and said, you know what, I'm going to stop defending this group, and I'm going to tell you that it was not good and it was bad.
Let's come back on Thursday for part 2, because what we didn't hear, Hoyt, is how you escaped, which I think is very harrowing. And I feel like there's some unanswered questions when I watched the doc about that. So we're gonna pause here and see you next time for how you got out, how you're healing, what you're doing now. And we have some questions for you as well that we're going to save to the end. So don't miss it, everybody.
Sinking down to the depths of the ocean, hanging on to the wave of my love. If I let go of it all, I could leave, but I know I won't.
We hope you're enjoying A Little Bit Culty. If so, please do show us some love. Drop a rating or leave a review. Hit subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/alittlebitculty.
Even better, send this episode to someone who needs it. Maybe they're in a cult. Maybe they're just a little bit susceptible. Or maybe they just love a good story. Spread the word, spread the love. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.
A Little Bit Culty is a Trace 120 production.
Executive produced by Sarah Edmondson and Anthony Nippy Ames in collaboration with producer Will Rutherford at Citizens of Sound. Our co-creator is Jess Temple Tardy.
Our production coordinator is Leslie Dinsmore.
Writing by Sandra Namoto and social media marketing by Eric Swarzinski and Brooke Keene.
Our theme song, Cultivated, is by the artists John Bryant and Nigel Aslan.